Hey everyone, and welcome back to another process walkthrough video. This one will be for the final piece in this month's set, where our characters kind of wake up and just go to work. So, well, this will also be the final piece for this year, 2023. And, well, as always, I hope you're having a good end of year break. Probably by the time you see this, we might just be in the new year already, but nonetheless, hope you're having a great 2024 if you're watching this in, well, the next year. So for this particular piece, it's the last one of the set, and let's take a look at how it came to be. So for the very first piece, initially, the idea was to have the characters basically leaving their house, right? Because we just had them in their house, and now, well, they're leaving it. And so how we're going to do this particular piece is that to start off with, we want to make sure they're in a different place. Now that's pretty obvious, but how are we going to exactly do that? How do we know that they are traveling to a different place? Now, the easy answer here is, of course, show them walking. By having them walk and having them be in a related but different place, a different location, for example, here in an alleyway, we're going to be able to convey kind of the intent that, well, they have done their preparation, they're on their way somewhere, right? That somewhere doesn't matter too much for now, but we know that they're going somewhere. So here we are. So this was the initial first frame, and here is where one difficulty that I did not anticipate actually came up. So when we're drawing characters by themselves, usually things are pretty easy to manage, right? Because when you're drawing a character from the front especially, or even from the side, right? Perspective is important in a sense that they have to be in the right proportion to their background, right? For example, someone in the background here is going to be like this tall. If there's only one character, let's say we have a composition here with one character, maybe this is the head and this is the torso, right? That character or that character, the main character you're drawing, in terms of proportion, you just need to control, for example, how big or how small they are relative to background characters. So if everyone's about the same size, even though they are pretty far behind the character in terms of space in the physical dimension, quote unquote, in the canvas, in the piece, then you can tell that it's a pretty long lens, i.e. you're looking at the character from far away, so everyone nearby appears about the same size. So that's kind of the easy part of the concept to grasp, right? It's pretty simple, it's pretty easy. Wait, let me get over to here. Yeah, so it's pretty simple and easy to kind of grasp that part of the concept. Now with two characters, things become a bit more complex, because if you move this camera closer, let me just kind of describe things kind of here. Let me use a different color. If you have character 1 and character 2. So if you have a camera that's all the way over here and you're looking at them from here, right? All you will really see is their front, demarcated by the green lines, right? Let's say their inner sides are blue and the outer sides are yellow. So if we're looking at them from here, right, your line of sight, you're going to see them like this. You're going to be able to see the green. The green is going to occupy 99% of your field of view. That's perfectly fine. You're going to see a little bit of blue, and you're going to see a teeny bit of yellow, maybe at the edges, just poking out, like very small elements. And so that's going to be corresponding to looking at the characters with long lens from far away. However, the difference between this and a single character is that when you move the camera up front, you don't just have to handle whatever's behind the character. For example, if we're only looking at this character, let's kind of get rid of this thingy. If we're only looking at this character, right, like moving the camera from here to here, all you need to do is to make sure you see a little bit less when you move the camera from position 1 to position 2. All you need to make sure is that you can only see green, right? Because of your field of view. The blue and the yellow is hidden, or they're barely visible. So it's not that hard, right? And honestly, most of the time you can get away with it not being too precise on this particular part of, drawing your character. Now, the problem with having two characters is that if you move the camera in closer, you don't just get to make some minor alterations and, get away with it. It becomes really obvious when something is wrong, because if your camera is close up, you should be able to see a substantial portion of this blue surface here. And now this becomes an issue, because if you're trying to tune the distance of the camera, from your characters, you're going to have to redraw the characters in a way. So as you can see, I started off with the characters being seen from far away. Notice the position of the eyes of this character versus the final effect. Notice the difference. Really substantial, right? Really substantial. That's not good, unfortunately. And the reason for that is because initially, while I wanted to draw the characters from far away, I liked the background too much, right? I wanted to showcase more of the background, and I just didn't want to have, like, you know, those kind of scenes where the background is super compressed, where you can't really see much. So my solution here was to kind of struggle with this, and which is why I'm sharing with you this experience now, is that when drawing two characters or a character off to the side, which is the most common when you're drawing multiple characters, you have to be careful with your camera distance, and when you adjust it, be prepared to make the changes. So as you can see here, this is where I start to make some changes. All right, slightly shifting it to there. And because of how the background looks, it looks as if this character is not looking, let's say, we have her walking to the front, and this character is walking to the front. So because of the proximity of the camera that's indicated by the scene, the rest of the scene, her doing this may look like perfectly normal if we're looking at it from far away, but because it's up close and we're expecting to see, you know, this inner blue surface as we indicated here, and we don't, right? And we see an equal amount of yellow surface. What it looks like to us from this particular close-up shot is that the character has turned to face the camera. So if the camera is here, the character has turned her head to face the camera, which is kind of odd, right? Because with all these drawings, the characters are kind of like being quote-unquote spied upon. They don't know the camera is there, right? It's kind of like in a movie where actors never look at a camera. It's something like that. So we can't have this, and therefore continuing to adjust. As you can see here, I start to catch on to that, because to be honest, drawing two characters at once, not my forte at all. And especially this is really the first time I encountered a scene which needed a lot of decision making between drawing a scene from close and from far. So having decided to draw it from a bit closer, this character needed to be adjusted to kind of face forward rather than face this way, right? i.e. we're going to show more of the blue side of the character, right? The blue side of the character needs to be exposed, and the yellow side of the character needs to be hidden. For this character here, it's not too bad because notice our vanishing point, or our central position of our eyeball, right? Because if we look at this diagram, right, it's a bit unfair for the character on the right because we're closer to the character on the left. So even if we shift a bit, even if we shift backwards or forwards, we see very little of this blue strip because kind of in line already. So here, our character on the left doesn't need too much adjustment. Once again, recall that I say you can get away with a lot more if your vanishing point or your kind of like direct look ahead point is very close to your character, like in a single character illustration. But when there are two characters, this blue zone and this green zone becomes really important to manage. And as you can see, from this frame to this frame is where I kind of fully pick up on that and make that change, right? So you can see the blue zone here, right, of the character's face. The side of her face is a lot more obvious, right? And her chest and body is also contoured towards the right to kind of correspond to a setup like this being seen from a short distance away. So enough about this, but it is one of the most important parts of this piece that I wanted to highlight to you, and also why reference isn't perfect. Because in your reference image, you could see you could be focusing on the pose, right? You could think, hey, the pose looks great. And you're like, okay, let's just think about the characteristics of this pose, and the difficulty and trap here is that you might think of it too much in the pixel sense, right? If you think of the pixel sense of the pose, it's not going to work for you when you want to expand the scene out into one that is shot closer to the character, right? So now that is out of the way, as always, feel free to ask me to elaborate in the comments if I'm unclear. But now that is out of the way, let's talk about some of the lighting and background choices that I made. Well, initially, the concept was that of a very dark and narrow alleyway. So that was interesting to me because I wanted them to kind of scale up. Like, I imagine, like, the moment you leave your house, you wouldn't be out on the main street, kind of. So I wanted them to start quiet. Now the problem with starting quiet is that it's uninteresting, right? A narrow alley is kind of boring. The lighting here is also a problem because initially I thought, hey, having some dappled light, is that the word dappled light? Could be interesting, could be good, yeah, right? So I evolved it to this state, but then I realized, hey, this is not really suitable for a morning scene because in the morning, and if you have characters essentially like, let's say this is the alleyway and these are the characters, they're really small in the grand view of things. So to have this kind of lighting, you need the light to come basically directly from above, get blocked by a bunch of signboards or different stuff, and then reach the character. Well, the issue here is that because it's morning, the light is going to be coming in from this angle. It's going to be coming from this angle. So the characters aren't going to receive this sort of lighting, so, you know, it's a no-go. And then that's a problem. So to resolve this, I decided, hey, what if we have the characters directly hit by the light instead of, you know, kind of like hiding behind something? So this was my kind of next solution for the problem. Have the characters essentially be hit by the light and introducing the angle of the morning light directly in a single shot. So for example, there could be a signboard to their left. So the characters are here, and then there's a signboard to the left that's blocking the sunlight from their upper bodies. So something like this is the idea here. So this is where I become a bit more confident of this particular setup. And then I proceed on to add more detail. As you can see, one of the most notable things here is that I actually widened up the road in the background. So this was another choice that I had to make because I felt like, what's the point of shooting a scene from close up if all you end up is with something that's really, really narrow anyway? So I thought, hey, you know, why not make the scene a bit more vibrant? Why not show off more of the city in a more realistic, busy way rather than just having two of them walk through a deserted town? So this was kind of the idea that I had at this point in time, and which is something that I wanted to execute. So in this area over here, interestingly enough, is also kind of like something left over from the very first stage. Now, the thing about drawing these type of visuals here is that although it looks really rough, but I feel like it still works decently enough when you look at it from far away. And the reason is because I have a good idea of what actually I'm drawing. So to describe to you guys just a little bit, right? For example, the signboard here, that's a bit more obvious. We have some windows here, indicated by these lines temporarily. We have these like awnings or, you know, those kind of vinyl, rubber, or plastic covers that can extend across like your store merchandise when it's raining or when it's too bright. We have the storefront and there are signboards below, right? And we have a little bit of free space here for, you know, those air conditioning units and whatnot, with a little bit of asymmetry and unevenness for the height of the signboards. And then we have like this area here, which is the windows of the signboard or the storefronts. And then we have some parked cars, once again very poorly drawn because this is a draft stage. Some parked cars, and we have some traffic cones. So by being able to understand what I'm drawing, I can kind of create a scene that holds up to being seen from pretty far away decently enough, right? Because the idea is that, well, generally there's a high density of objects here under a shade. And yeah, by just capturing this concept, I'm able to hold this area for a while until I can get to it later on. Same goes for the left side as well, but because we're a bit closer to this side, we get to draw things from a bit more of a closer perspective, which helps as well. And then moving on to the next phase where, you know, after all these phases, so much of working on the character's perspective, we get to finally draw more of the background. And so we basically continue. In this particular stage, I focus my energies on drawing the character well, which is also difficult, right? Because the character is, well, how do I put it? In perspective, in a way that has to interact with each other in a very accurate way. They have to be able to look like they belong in the same scene. Once again, the challenge with drawing two characters is that they have to look like they belong from the same camera angle, right? And that little thing that I thought I could get away with in the beginning, that I was telling you about, the fact that if you're drawing a character from close by and far away, as long as you're kind of aligned with them, as long as it's in line, you can get away with a little bit of laziness. Well, turns out that wasn't true either. So in this case, you can see me making some adjustments from this stage to the final stage, where I kind of emphasize the width of her shoulders and the puff of her suit jacket, And stuff like this kind of gets emphasized. Reason being, once again, we're close to the character, so we kind of have to expand her front surface. Right, the green surface here has to be expanded, and the yellow and blue is shrunk. So from here to here, you can see that is the effect that is going on. So really, this piece, the struggle about this piece is really all just in the perspective, the basics. So once again, basics are really, really important. And here you can see me getting caught off guard by my own foolishness, and then spending a lot of time sort of kind of remedy that. And then, yeah, that's really just suboptimal. So please avoid that if you can. But yeah, otherwise, this one is pretty much close to completion. So I'll just run through the background just for the last part. So the background, right, from here to here, I thought, okay, let's expand the situation a little bit more. The main issue here is that this particular scene looks a little bit too strange. They're walking down the side of a road. Aren't there cars while they're walking down this particular area? It feels like the scene is mundane enough in a way that they're just going about a daily routine, that it doesn't quite justify this kind of like, I'm so cool, I'm just walking down the middle of the road in traffic type of scenes, right? It's actually not cool in real life, obviously. But in terms of a illustration or composition, right? If your character just did something super cool, like maybe they fought a monster or something, they can walk down the middle of the road, you know, in terms of mood and tone, it works out. But for this particular scene, it doesn't really make sense. They are just leaving the house for a day at work, so they wouldn't be walking down the middle of the road, especially one that is this wide. So I changed it to a sidewalk. Some of those streets have really wide sidewalks, for like storefronts or like subway entrances or something like that. So I decided to kind of, hey, let's try that out. So we had like this little bit of zebra crossing in between a kind of like a driveway or turn-in point for the cars off the main road. So what we have here is essentially showing a path for the characters, right? Converting this initial vanishing point or quote-unquote one-point perspective setup, we kind of justify it using a main road. So we can show that they kind of walk down from there. Maybe their home was somewhere here, now they're walking down the street. We're also showing that this city is indeed real. There are people walking around. There are all kinds of characters in the city. There's a bunch of signboards and all that good stuff. So this thing is this is really important to making a piece feel more alive, because when you're trying to draw characters in a city, you eventually have to kind of show how the city is. And here I think I did a decent enough job to draw a couple of background extras to kind of fill in the space to show what's going on in a city and how these characters essentially live in it. And once again, the handy trick about using floor grids, well, there they are again. Little stone bricks in the floor, over here as well, and the zebra crossing are really, really good ways to kind of seal in the deal for us in terms of perspective. And so is this fence, right? This fence in the middle of the road, while it seems unimportant, gives us a lot of information about how close this element is to the camera and how much foreshortening it receives, well, is displayed here by the gap and scaling between each bar in the fence. So lots of small details here in the finishing parts of this particular piece, but I had honestly a pretty good time finishing this one, as challenging as it might be and as much problem as I ran into for the basics. I'm not embarrassed to admit that, because as I say, we're always learning, and this is just one of those things that you kind of know but can hit you off guard at a moment's notice. So once again, hopefully this one has been especially helpful in terms of drawing characters in perspective. And when a background doesn't match, right, hopefully this could be helpful in helping you find out what exactly went wrong. And so yeah, this is pretty much the last video of the year and of this set. And I hope this set of process videos has been helpful. As always, please feel free to ask me to elaborate on anything in the comments below. I really appreciate you guys for the support here. Another year has passed, and honestly, you know, a little bit off topic, but I really think Patreon is something that has been super helpful in terms of keeping me kind of mentally grounded in a way, to be super grateful that to have you guys that support me just to do my own thing, and that's just really, really privileged and amazing. It makes everything worth it. And so yeah, that's really just something really nice and something I'm super thankful for this year and hopefully next year as well. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching this particular set. Hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you next month or next year. Well, thanks again and take care.